Good evening and welcome to The Journey Home. My name is Marcus Grodi, your host for this program, and this is a special edition of The Journey Home. It's a roundtable, but it's also a roundtable that we're filming here in Lunden Cloister outside of Oslo, Norway. We've been here at the Lunden Cloister, the Dominican nuns of Our Lady of the Annunciation, filming Journey Home programs and other EWTN programs. In this special edition of the roundtable, we're going to focus on the importance of catechesis as well as the vocational call. And I've invited to join us on this roundtable some new friends, and thank you all three of you for joining. We've got Christina Dingstad with us, Father Radar Voigt, and Father Sigurd Markussen. Thank all three of you. What we normally do at home in the Journey Home roundtables is invite each guest to give a very short snippet of your spiritual journey, to remind the audience, because at least two of you, we've already done a Journey Home, and Father Sigurd, we're going to find out in a moment why we haven't had a Journey Home episode on you particularly, but thank you for joining us. So Christina, why don't we begin with you, if you would.
Thank you. Well, I was born 35 years ago, and my parents, my father used to be a Lutheran priest. So I have this traditional Christian upbringing, actually. We went to church every Sunday, and we read the Bible, and we did our prayers every day. But something was missing, actually, so 10 years ago I converted to the Catholic Church. And as I said, it was really coming home, actually.
What are you doing now?
I'm the information leader in the Diocese of Oslo.
Okay, so you actually do have a very direct connection to the topic we're looking at today.
I do, and I'm also a catechesis teacher.
All right, well, thank you, Christina.
Thank you.
Father Radar.
Yes, I was born 37 years ago, I guess. And I was baptized in the Lutheran Church, which something that my grandmother didn't quite agree on, and started her journey home for me. So, assisted by the St. Elizabeth Sisters, I was brought up in the Catholic faith in the parish in Tønsberg. And I'm very, very happy for that today. And, well, I got my vocation back in the beginning of the 90s, and studied for the priesthood, and is now the parish pastor of the parish of Our Lady in Porsgrunn, about 150 kilometers south of Oslo.
All right, and a very small parish.
Well, we are about 2,000 Catholics, and the size is more or less the half of Belgium, the parish size.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, that's basically the size of most dioceses in the United States. Well, thank you, Father Radar.
Thank you.
And Father Sigurd.
Yes, well, I'm the oldest one. I'm 41 years old. I'm brought up in a Catholic family. We always went to the church every Sunday, said prayers at home, and I really enjoyed the catechesis classes when I was a child. My brothers found that very strange. It happens that I received my vocation in Lourdes, in Migrato, during my military pilgrimage in '86. I refused the vocation at that time, but I eventually was ordained in '96, and I'm now today pastor of a Catholic parish in Arendal, south of Norway. We have about 1,000 Catholics in the parish, just about 900, 1,000. We run a school, primary school, secondary school, and also a kindergarten.
Is your parish similar to Father Radar's in terms of size?
Well, yes, mostly. But in my parish, most of the Catholics are centered down by the sea. So we don't have that much mountain Catholics in my parish. The area is there, but the Catholics are very few.
All right, thank you, all three of you. One of the most common things that I've heard when I've interviewed converts to the church, both here in Norway as well as last week when we were in Sweden, is that majority of the converts came from Lutheranism, the state church, but it seemed in many ways that their catechesis had not been very strong. And I'm wondering, amongst the three of you, talk a bit about your own personal experience of catechesis as a young person here in Norway, if you would.
Would love to, actually, but I learned, my Bible, my prayers at home. My parents were really, really clever, to give me a Christian upbringing, actually. So that's where I found, my faith, actually, from my parents.
And your father was actually a Lutheran
He was a
minister,
Lutheran
right?
priest,
Priest.
yeah. But nowadays, I mean, the children, they don't learn a lot at home anymore because the parents, they don't know their faith. So that's the problem, about doing catechesis, because they don't know, the basic prayers and the basic Bible stories anymore. Yeah.
Parents don't, so that
Yeah.
it's hard for them to pass it on to their children.
It is.
But also at school, the problem is that when we went to school in primary school, we were still singing psalms every morning. We said Our Father every day. Today it's banned from the schools, from the state schools.
When did that happen?
So, well, it's slowly just diminished. Yeah. And so when the parent doesn't know their faith, or they don't know anything about the church, the school doesn't teach anymore, you might be happy to find some surroundings that really pick up a faith surrounding.
That's the same in my case. My mother prayed for us children every evening. My father was a seaman in those days, so we didn't see him very much. He was down at Madagascar, sailing around.
Oh, wow.
But then also I had a possibility to talk very much with my parish priest, Father van Vught, as I mentioned earlier. And also we got catechesis in our home by the St. Elizabeth Sisters. They came home, and I enjoyed it very much, to learn about the faith, to study it, to understand, to practice it. For me it was a sort of a thrill. My brother didn't understand very much of it either, but that's how it is. But I think today the most important thing is just what you mentioned, that still in our days you could expect the faith to be transferred from the parents to the children in the home. Today doesn't happen anymore. But also this has something to do, I think, with the immigration. Don't forget that our church here in Norway is to a large extent an immigration church. And many parents coming from abroad, maybe with a weak catechesis themselves, find it quite impossible to transfer or to give catechesis to their own children in a foreign language. And what they see is basically a neo-pagan society. Norway is not a Christian nation anymore. It's a neo-pagan.
Now, did that happen because, when we read the stories, not just of Norway or Denmark, but often in many of the countries in Europe, when Christianity came to these countries, it often came because the king converted and now all had to be Christian, or at the end of a sword. I mean, it's one possible far back reason. Is it also because in Norway, as in Sweden, for example, the Lutheran Church is the state church, so everyone's automatically a Lutheran, and that could diminish the need for, or is it also because, as happened in the United States after the war, into the 50s and 60s, all of a sudden you have a generation that says, I'm not going to force it on my children. I'm going to leave it up to them to decide. There's a little bit of all of that here.
But if you go 100 years back in history in Norway, everyone knew about the catechism. They knew about the Bible. They knew all the hymns and psalms, and they went to church.
So there was good catechesis.
Yeah. So and then it started. I think after the war, kind of urbanization and secularization, and the big cities got more and more secularized. While in the small cities, small places, you would still have strong catechesis and a very high amount of people going to church regularly and Sunday schools and so on. But this urbanization has now been spreading. So we are slowly secularized, also quite much helped by the state and the church, because the state and church now doesn't work that much together, and the church have left lots of the things to the state, and the state keeps all the religion, quite much of the religion, away from the schools.
In America, because of our Constitution, we have a separation of church and state, and often that's misinterpreted and applied too strongly. To again make sure that the 10 Commandments aren't listed anywhere, because that would be a promotion of religion.
Yep.
Is that also true in Norway?
He's fading away. You see, that's the problem. We are on a kind of slide. We was brought up in a school system that still had a kind of catechesis in the school.
Oh, yeah.
But 10 years ago, you would have youth who didn't have that much catechesis anymore. You rarely met teachers who were really Christians themselves. And then you have this separating of the RE classes into Christianity, religion, and ethics and philosophy. And today we are to treat every subject equal, more or less. The majority is to be on the Christianity, but in a neutral factor. So in the public schools, it's all neutral. A teacher is not allowed to say, I believe, but he or she has to say, the Christian believes, the Muslim believes, the Jews believes.
But the basic line, I think, is that, or the bottom line of this is that catechesis or religious education in any form has to be provided by the church itself. You might say that in America you have a secular state, but you have a vivid Christian church. Here we have a quite lame state church, to put it that way. The church is there, but the church does everything for you. You don't have to provide anything yourself. The initiative for the catechesis will not come from the state or through the state channels anymore. We have to do it ourselves. So basically what we have to learn is that if you want a church, you have to do something for it.
And you actually have to learn the children how to pray. You know, last Saturday we had this catechesis, and I have 8-year-old children, and they're wonderful. But I was trying to, teach them about Our Father. And I was sure that they knew this prayer. Of course, they're 8 years old. I knew it by heart when I was 3 or 4. But actually, some of the children, they didn't know it. They have never heard about Our Father, and the Catholic children. So actually, we have to learn them, the basic things. And that's a big challenge, but it's great fun as well.
And that's also quite the biggest challenge for us as priests and also as the catechesis, because we have this wide variety of pupils. We have those from very pious families who knows. They know the Mass by heart from they are able to talk, and then you have the ones that, Mass, what is that? And they don't know what a priest is either. So our challenge is to try to mix these two groups together and give a very good catechesis to both, and try to explain how it is and why and so on.
But I think that the major failure we have done in our church regarding the catechesis is that we have created for ourselves a sort of a dogma that the responsibility of catechesis is the responsibility of the parents. The parents are those who are to give catechesis to their children. It's even stated in the canon law. Don't ask me why it's there, but anyhow, the major point is that the responsibility for the catechesis, of course, is the responsibility of the parents as well. But where they fail, it is the responsibility of the parish, of the diocese, of the church. And our situation here in Norway is pretty much like the one as the church once in 1,000 years ago started to root in Norway. We are in the same situation. And what happened in those days? The catechesis was given by the monks, by the nuns, by the bishops, by the parishes. And we have to, in a sense, rediscover this responsibility.
It was interesting when I've been reading a book that sisters gave me by Sigrid Undset, a history of the saints and the history of the church here in Norway. It's a fascinating book. I highly recommend. But I did notice she made the comment that the two early Olafs that had the biggest impact, that one of the distinctions she makes is that the first one, used force to bring the different areas, but he taught the faith, kind of with the sword in his hand. The second Olaf came in, but he let the priests and the bishops communicate.
Exactly, and but also when you're reading this Kristin Lavransdatter, she learned the faith from her father, but her father learned it probably from a monk, one generation back. And of course, at a time where you have parents who really know their faith, they can transfer this faith to the parents, to the children, no problem. But today we have parents, we have adults who don't know Our Father. One thing are the children who are 8 years old, no wonder, but when you have a man age 40 or 50 going to church who he doesn't know how to pray.
We tried to start a new project a couple of years ago in my parish to invite all children from 0 to 15, 16 years old for catechesis. So we have this kindergarten group, 0 to 3 years old. Well, it's not much catechesis you can do to them, but if you invite them together, of course you have to invite the parents. So we invite the parents with the children to get together in our kindergarten, and they will have Bible sharing, sing some psalms, and make some Bible drawings and play and so on. Have a meal, also join all the catechesis for Mass. And then we have catechesis for Good Shepherd catechesis for 4th to 6 years old. So when they are starting the catechesis program from the second year school, 7 years old, they have been used to go to church. The parents have been used to go to church. The parents have been used to the prayers, and they are all mixed together, so they have some friends. Because that is also a challenge in Norway. Quite many of the young Catholic children, they are the single Catholic in school, or single Catholic in the whole neighborhood at all. So to make friends between them and to make them kind of socialized into Catholic surroundings, which also draw the parents together, because if we can make them friends too, it's more easy for them to go to church and join for the church, because they will know someone.
You know, in America, I'm not always comparing to America, but it's the most I'm most familiar with. We have a thing called the feeder system. Whether it's soccer or basketball, you start them out young, right? And they build teams and the camaraderie and teamwork. So by the time they're in high school, I mean, they're already a team. They're already skilled. I mean, that's what we need to do in the church too. That's what you're talking about.
That is what we are doing. I mean, I can't really compare my parish with you and starting almost before they are born, you know, to socialize them. But we start in the 2nd grade in the children's school, and then we have 10 years of catechesis, at least an offer for it. So that means that a Catholic boy or girl is offered at least 200 hours with catechesis through these years, and then weekends and trips and everything comes together with that. But what we see is that the children are coming and they are enjoying it, and they are getting known with each other, they are getting friends with each other, and it's much more fun to go to church because someone is expecting you there. You have someone to play with after church. But then also, of course, that what is required for the catechesis. You can see tons of plans of what is needed, but what is required, life itself puts this up. A young Catholic, he or she needs to know her faith or his faith. Why do I believe what I believe? How do we believe that it is? And how do we practice this faith? They have to be able to stand at their own feet. And that means that the requirements for the catechesis, they are fairly high. But it's necessary, because if not, they will probably drop out.
I think maybe the problem for the catechesis in Norway has been that sometimes we have, been talking a lot about, the Catholic faith compared to the Lutheran faith. Of course, because we've been telling you the specific Catholic things, the saints, the 7 sacraments, about the cardinals and the Pope. And as I told you in my Journey Home program, actually I was having this group of for confirmation, and I thought I've been training them quite good actually. And at the end of the year, I asked them, is there something you don't know much about now? And then this young girl, she said, well, Christina, we don't know a lot about Jesus. And that's really interesting, isn't it? And that's because they're lacking this, basic things. And that's a call up for, teachers and priests as well. Because we have to give them, this personal relationship with Jesus, to say it quite simple. But if they don't have that, everything else is useless,
Well,
actually.
that really touches on Father Sigurd's struggle when you have it in one class, students with a complete range. Some don't even know Jesus, and others probably could quote the 7 sacraments. There you go. How do you provide a program?
And but also in the line of what you say, as we have talked about earlier this year, that all our confirmation class programs, they presupposes in a sense that they are practicing Catholics. But those teenagers attending our classes are necessarily not. So you have to start with a different perspective, more in the fundamental philosophy. Why is it a reasonable thing to believe in a God? Why is religion a reasonable thing and not just superstition? Which are the most popular, widespread theories explaining everything? And where does the Christian revelation come into this?
Because they're inundated with the voices of media all over the place, from all around the world
exactly.
now,
And
internet.
this will be to take these confirmation class students serious, and also to take their faith questions serious. So in a sense, you have to add this in the first hours at least.
In addition, we also have a kind of challenge in all those who arise in Norway. We have lots of Polish people coming out, Polish families, and the youth group there have been drawn out from the familiar home context in Poland, friends, girlfriends, boyfriends, and so on. And they come here to Norway, forced into the Norwegian school system, and also forced into kind of practicing the Catholic faith in a Polish-Norwegian variety, and they are in kind of against the parents from before, and also in the church. And we have for the catechism, for the confirmants now, I have 14 for the confirmation in the confirmation group, confirmation now, and half of the group is Polish.
Is there an anger there in them? Because they've been brought here, a lot of those young people?
Yeah, so some of them are quite reluctant, it's okay for them, but quite many of them, they say, well, Norway is not a place. This is nothing. And the mother and father doesn't speak Norwegian that well. They struggle. They might have been one of the brightest one at class, or not that bright in Poland, but still they knew the language. And now they come here and they are forced into a new system, making new friends, and well, there's so much happening in them. And they are forced into the church, forced to practice a faith that they really can't verbalize because they don't understand. And that in Oslo area, that's easier because we have lots of Polish priests and Polish masses, but in this district it's quite. Yeah.
But to immigrate to Norway at all is quite difficult.
Yeah.
With our mother tongue, I mean, I can understand that people are getting depressed.
Yeah.
I hate to say I've been here for a week and I don't think I've picked up one word yet. But part of the reason is because Norwegians speak such great English that I don't have to. And we've talked a lot about the youth and the children. What about those adults that don't know their faith in terms of catechesis? That's got to be a challenge.
It's extremely difficult because they are from so many nations. Just in my own parish, a middle-sized parish in Norway, I have 75 various nationalities. Translations of the Sunday Mass is in 6 languages, written translation. And it still doesn't add up. Still I can have people coming complaining that I don't find my own language, no, but that's because you speak some sort of Eastern Chinese or I don't know what. It is difficult, and the lacks in their catechesis might also vary. Some have a very strong practice but no theory. Some have a very strong theory but they have never practiced. And then also the fact that many of these do have a very weak Norwegian or even Western language. If they don't speak a Western language, what do I do?
And some have nothing. They don't even have practice or any theory, but they feel homesick, and then they go to church because they have. That's kind of
That's the third category, you know.
Yeah. And they try desperate to feel something that can help their homesick.
I was also wondering if many places around the world after the Vatican Council, there went through a kind of a crisis in the way that the council was applied, and that had a big upheaval in catechesis in many places around the world. I don't think, not because of the council itself, but because of the way it was applied. Was some of that happening here in Norway at all?
It has happened, yes. I am one of 2 priests celebrating the Tridentine Mass in our diocese, and I have had people at your age coming crying, thanking me, because finally 40 years in the valley of deadly shadows is over. So I think that will probably with the years coming, when this is less political tension around this, you will find out that many left the church because what they appreciated was taken away from them, very brutally.
I think the challenge for the church today is going to admit that time has changed. You know, this is modern. In modern times, things are not ideal, not even for catechesis. And I think we have to kind of, change the catechesis and have kind of different expectations. I think sometimes we have to give the children like good experiences, to learn them basic, prayers and Bible stories and everything, and then really let them meet people that they can identify with, young people, and then when they might come back to church later on in life, actually, just to give them good experiences with the church. Because time has changed.
As mentioned.
When I was a child, everyone knew everyone in the parish. When I was born in 1966, we were just about 7,000 Catholics in the whole of Norway. In my parish, we have fixed seats. Well, my family is quite a big family. We had 2 rows in the church, and every family had their own row, own bench. So we knew who was not at church, and we might also know why, because they would be away. Everyone knew. And when I started catechesis and started school in 1973, they invented a new system, the Canadian system, into the catechesis classes in Norway. Before that, it had been kind of Dutch-German system, and now the Canadian system came, and then suddenly we had these huge immigration waves in the 70s, 80s, 90s, and then now again in the 2005, 6, 7, 8. So when I was born, we were just about 7,000 Catholics now, and we are just about 200,000 now.
Wow.
So
Quick growth.
This is gone really quick.
Why don't we take a pause there? We'll come right back to our discussion. We need to take a little bit of a break. All right? So stay with us. Back just a moment. Welcome back to this special episode of The Journey Home, a roundtable that we're taping here outside of Oslo, Norway. And our guests, again, are Christina Dingstad and Father Radar Voigt and Father Sigurd Markelson. That's right, Markelson. I want to make sure I said it right. Thank you, all 3 of you. In the first half, we focused on the unique needs of catechesis here in Norway. In many ways, all of us around the world can relate to a lot of those same issues, especially the one about the parents not able to, help their children themselves. So there's a huge span of catechesis as a challenge. How are you meeting that challenge here in Norway? Are you meeting that challenge?
Well, yes, actually, here, as priests, we are meeting it every day. We try to, through some struggle, we try to reach out, and many places we are very successful. We reach really out. In my parish, we have now about 80% of all children in the school age are attending the catechesis classes.
It's amazing.
But still, we have small distances compared with lots of other parishes. In my previous parish in Haugesund, in the middle of between Bergen and Stavanger, we had about 50% of the children coming into catechesis. Because of distance, mostly because of distance, but also because of parents who doesn't attend mass
and the multiculturalism.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think it's important to say that even though there are many problems, and we talked about them in the first part of this problem, all the challenges, still what we see is that people are happy to hear about the faith. It's easier to talk about the faith today than it was maybe 10 or 15 years ago. At least I feel it that way. And what I see in my parish, despite the distances that I have about 250, 300 kilometers to the parish border, still I got about 60% of all the children attending catechesis. And I run catechesis in 3 different places in my parish. Also in these small, almost mission places where we have catechesis and we have Mass. And then, for instance, in Rjukan, which is 150, 160 kilometers away from my parish church, I have 15 children, 5 who are going for confirmation now towards the end of May. And also in my parish site, Påskeren, I have about 90 children coming to catechesis. So what we see is that if the catechesis is there, if it's good, parents will send their children. And when they send their children, they will also have at least some drops of the catechesis themselves. So I think the basic question is priority. That our second most important priority is the catechesis. The first priority is the Sunday Mass, and then the catechesis comes. And that's the way it has to be, at least in our lifetime.
What about pulpit catechesis? Is that supported strongly here in
Pulpit
Norway?
catechesis,
In other words, from the pulpit, the
you
preaching.
mean the preaching? Well, the problem is which language. Because I know that 1/3 of my parish doesn't understand a single word of what I'm saying. But of course, the sermon, the preaching is important, but it has to be straight to the point.
Well, in addition to the pulpit catechesis, I also have a kind of a font catechesis. When I was the parish priest in Haugesund, I discovered that lots of children, they didn't know much about baptism, and parents didn't know really much about what's happening after baptism and during baptism. So I started celebrating baptism in the High Mass, not outside the Mass. And I continued that also in Arendal. So I have about 95% of all baptisms happen in the High Mass.
Yes,
And
but you could fit all the people in your church.
Not anymore.
I mean, we don't have that luxury situation.
What's fascinating is that I always then invite all the children in the church, present in the church, and it's increasing number, to gather around the font and to see and help and join. And after all, also the service and so on. And then I explain all the rites, all the symbols, what we are doing, and what the sacrament is all about. Some of the parishioners have now heard it again and again and again, and slowly it gets in. Yeah. And now they know about the symbolism, they know what's happening, and also when we have other sacraments celebrating, we are trying to involve the children and also the adults in a kind of children way.
And the godparents.
And the godparents, of course. But lots of the adults have said that when we preach to the children, they gather more sometimes from the homily than from another homily. And it's not because they are low in intelligence, but some of the adults have lost of catechesis. They need to have it in a basic way. And then they are turned to children, as Jesus said, if you know, are like a children.
I think we have to keep in mind that catechesis is more than just, giving knowledge. And the children and the youth, they have to gather, social, and they have to, learn to live their liturgical life. Experiences is really, really important. And I think our situation in Norway there is quite unique, because we have this quite good association for young Catholics in Norway. And they're doing, well, among other things, like summer camps and camps for Easter. So children and youth from all over the country, they come together, to live a liturgical life. And, they play and they sing and everything, like for 1 week. And that's also catechesis, isn't it?
Well, that's like you also said that
is.
they're building community.
Yeah.
And that's so important.
Yeah.
And in Norway, we're quite lucky that we have vocations. I mean, especially for priesthood, and quite many of our young men, that's in seminaries today, they have got their vocations from, the camps and the experiences, and that's also catechesis.
Let's go there, because that's an important issue. Behind vocations is the importance of catechesis. What about the vocations here in Norway?
I think that, of course, each vocation is individual in a sense, but I think you can find some things in common with many of these vocations. And one of the first is that I think most of us, at least you and I as well, we had a good, idols among the priests. We had priests we can name priests who still are alive, all of them basically, who have been very important to us, very good examples in way of living the priestly life. Of course, because our church is not that big, also the closeness was important, that we knew these priests, we could talk with them, we could call them, they could achieve us in the presbyteries and tell us about their life and so on. But also what you mentioned, the youth ministry or the youth association, it's important to remember that vocation and catechesis, they are quite linked.
Yeah.
They are almost the same in a sense, because what is the catechesis about? It is about to open your heart for our Lord, to receive the grace of our Lord into your life and live the life of faith. And vocation is basically to answer to what the Lord asks you. And this youth apostolate is extremely important. If you look at it, if you had taken your camera crew to a youth camp, you would probably have seen
Next time, right.
you would probably have seen that these youngsters are just like all other youngsters, no difference there, but the catechesis they receive through the mass, through the pulpit, if you want to, through the catechesis hours, through the being together, is very consistent. You might say maybe a bit conservative, but still, but it's consistent and it's straightforward. This is right, this is wrong, this is sin, this is a virtue, and so on, so on, so on. So there is no cozy language, but it's straight to the line. What is the faith and why? And that is highly appreciated.
And also, well, yeah, because the main is to both faith and belonging, because it's important for us to bring these young children to a church that they feel they belong to. It's not only the faith is spoken, but it's also something that they can relate to. And I was youth minister for 4 years, and going around telling it's okay to be Catholic in Norway today, although you might be alone. And it's okay to pray. And I got quite good contact with lots of the young people who now are students and still call me or mail me and tell me that tomorrow I'm having an exam at university. Could you please lit a candle and say a prayer for me? And I know from my background, also from my previous parish priest when I grew up, he told me when I told him that I was entering the seminary that he had prayed for me since he baptized me. Well, I didn't know. But he prayed for me every single day during my formation time in the seminary. And for me, sometimes I really thought about it, and sometimes I forgot about it. But at the end, it was a very good thing to know that actually he was really praying for me. And I think that is also for those who are now entering the seminary, saying yes to their vocation, that they know that there are some that really prays for them. And we are a very good group of younger, that is from 50 years and downward, priests who pray for the seminarians, who pray for the youth, pray for vocation. And also the bishop, our bishop have initiated our own day of prayer every first Friday every month. We are celebrating Mass for vocations.
You have an amazing statistic here in Norway of your vocations, right?
Yes,
Did we mention that to the audience? I mean, I think it's an amazing thing. Make sure they know.
But I think that if you ask the reason why do we have so many vocations, I think it is maybe two things that are important. First of all, we talk about vocation. I have told every single youngster I have had responsibility for as a youth minister or whatever at a camp or elsewhere that my goal is that when you're now in the beginning of your 20s and you're going to decide what to do with your life, please consider a vocation for priesthood or consecrated life together with a life as a single or as a married. Please consider these 4 options equally. And why can't you be a priest? And then normally they will say that, hey, wait, me? Yes, exactly, you. Think about it. And then they start to reflect and
You
think.
stood there for a while, right?
Yes, but I tell them all the time. It is speak straightforward and mention also vocation and prayer. It's not embarrassing. It's living the faith.
But also, I think it's very important, it was for me, and I know it's for quite many young men that they see happy priests.
Yeah, of course.
So if
I
the
want
priest
to be
only,
like him.
yeah,
They got to be able to
if the
say
priest
that.
only say,
Yeah.
"Oh, I'm just really I'm drained, I'm exhausted," I'm so fed up. The church would be so much better without any parishioners. I mean, if
That's your opinion,
if
but
that,
okay.
if that is the one you meet
Yeah, of course.
every Sunday, perhaps also for a weekday mass, you wouldn't consider, why should I? Why? It's a mess, everything. But if you see happy priests who can laugh together, who have some holiday together perhaps, or you see them happy. You see them happy at the altar, and you see them happy outside the
Yes,
church.
and then you mentioned the altar because that's also important. You have to say the mass. You have to celebrate the mass in a worthy and beautiful way, because at least it have to appear as if you believe in what you're doing. That's the absolute minimum, to put it that way, a bit jokingly, because when you see priests who are saying the mass in an unworthy way, a high mass with sermon in a quarter of an hour, do they deserve any vocations? Do they deserve any followers? Of course not. Everyone understands that he's a failure. So what it is about is that
gotta be contagious.
yes,
It's
when
gotta
you
be
look at our
contagious.
masses here in Norway, you will see that the high mass at Sunday especially is celebrated in a very, very solemn way. And also I see when I'm saying the Tridentine Mass that people are coming and enjoying that as well. And so also with the Novus Ordo, in the parishes, they are celebrated in a very, very solemn and beautiful way. And there you will see the faith alive. And that together with a happy priest, that is unbeatable.
I'd like to tag on both those things, because you have the experience here in Norway that it's true from the top down. I mean, a bishop has got to be the same way, right?
Yeah.
For his priests and for his people, right?
Exactly.
Now, you mentioned the 4 vocations that you always encourage, and Christina, you're a laywoman. I mean, as you discerned your own vocation, we've got young women watching. The statistic here in Norway is amazing, right? I mean, the number of vocations per capita, what is it, is the largest in, maybe in the world, if not just here.
In numbers are not big. We have 8 seminarians. In number it's not big, but for us being in such a small church in Norway, we are.
That's right. But mostly men, right?
Yes, at the
What about the
Yes.
vocations to the religious life?
Well, actually, it was actually the sisters, different congregations that actually builded the Catholic Church in Norway. So we have to thank them, really the sisters for
Like the sisters
church
that are here in
expanding.
this place
And
we're
they're
at, yeah.
wonderful. I have to really thank them. But today there is not that many female vocations in Norway, but I mean it goes up and down.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's a kind of a strange thing. It just goes up and
At
down.
the same time, we have to work a bit with those vocations. Well, we have to encourage the girls.
I think we do
Because
have
now
to,
they can see
yeah.
that the boys are becoming priests, then they can at least
Yeah.
follow.
But what's
So-
interesting is that youths nowadays they are really looking for authenticity, because I think they're getting kind of more conservative. They're really going back to the roots. Go back. And I think female, congregation, they have to think about that, because I mean, youngsters nowadays they want to wear like a habit. I mean, it's kind of as simple, simple as that. And they're going back to the traditions. So maybe the apostolic, especially female congregations, need to kind of do some thinking around, what appeals to young people today.
Again, something with belonging.
Yeah.
They need to feel that they
Identity,
belong
yeah,
and that they
yeah.
to something. Yeah.
But it is amazing in Norway. I mean, to see, when we go to youth camps and that kind of things, the youths bowing down for the Most Holy Sacrament. I mean, when you do the adoration, like the youths here, they love adoration, of the Most Holy Sacrament, and they're singing and praying, and it's just amazing. So we have a lot of opportunities, but we have to, do things wise.
And you can say, well, in my childhood, we never had rosary at our summer camps or in the parish catechesis. We never had benedictions. I grew up many years without, well, I knew about the rosary, but no one taught me. I never heard about benediction before I was at the age
In
of
the seminary.
15, 16 years old, something like I heard about it. I never attended benediction before I was a student at University in Bergen. I was 20 years old. But now, today, we are many priests who does it, and of course the bishop have encouraged all the parish to have benediction at least once a week. I know at camps and so on, we have this. And the youth are really, they are questioning why and what.
But I think it's important to mention there that we used these summer camps and various youth camps and weekends very deliberately to introduce the youngsters into the traditional Catholic culture, because many of them do live quite far away from church. Some might just have a small side chapel somewhere, and so on. And we use these camps to establish an understanding of what Catholic culture is about. And therefore they're also introduced to benedictions and so, but they also require it. I'll never forget when a youngster complained to me that, "Oh, Father, you are the most lazy, stupid idiot I know." No, well, excuse me, why do you say that? Well, you shortened the adoration. It was just 1.5 hours. And then, "Oh, fine, thank you, you're right, I am a stupid idiot. Next time we will do 2 hours." Thank you, Father, you're quite cool though.
You know, all the stuff that I hear you saying that's just flowering here in Norway, every time I hear it, I think of John Paul II. And I'm wondering, to a certain extent, was he the inspiration?
Disciples of him, yes.
But even adoration and benediction and the rosary, all of that were a big part of what he was encouraging wherever he went. And so was he behind a lot of the good things that are happening in Norway?
That for sure, but also not to forget that this sort of radical purification of the Catholicism that came in the aftermath of the Second Vatican Council didn't strike us that hard. So quite many things are also preserved. And what it is about is that life needs symbols. Life needs a sort of a practice. You can't just make the faith to an intellectual training. That is not faith. That is to destroy the faith, and that has happened many places. What you see here is a quite traditional faith in a modern form or in a modern society, and it's thriving, it's flowering. And I think that should be a sort of a wake-up for many people.
Yeah, many countries, many places around the world that are struggling. I mean, it reminds me of the bulbs underground, right?
Yeah.
And then in the spring, you see this flowering. I mean, it's been there all along, and now you're seeing this flowering. Let's say that we've got some viewers. Any words of encouragement to them in terms of their need for themselves in catechesis and as well as discerning their vocational call?
I would say seek Lord in prayer. It's never stop praying. I think praying, active prayer life leads to a closer nearness to God and also more an open heart to the gospel. And I think if you stop praying, it's hard to find God.
And I agree totally. And just to say, if you then ask how to pray, if you don't know it, then I will just recommend the book of Romano Guardini, the Introduction to Prayer, which is just great. Or even also the book of our present Pope, Cardinal Joseph Ratzinger, Jesus from Nazareth. It's also really good. So prayer and knowledge, that is what is needed. You have to know why you believe, what you believe, and how to practice it, and that means to pray. And then also see you at Sunday in church.
How about a word you do, Christina?
Well,
That's what you do. I mean,
that's true. Well, that's what I was going to say, go to Mass. And that's really, really important because sometimes, life, everyday life is busy and you don't have time to pray and my thoughts is everywhere else. But as soon as I go to church, my thoughts are gathered around the sacrament and it helps me. It's a really pedagogic way. I like pedagogic, things from God actually. So go to church as often as
that's
possible.
where we receive the graces.
Well, we had a slogan in the Youth Association, "See you at Sunday."
Yeah.
In Mass, of course, was then intended. And I think it's a good one. See you at Sunday.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you all.
Yeah.
very much.
Oh,
Not
thank you.
your information, but your wonderful dialogue, and I appreciate it so much. And I wonder, Father Markuson, I wonder if you could close us with a benediction, a blessing.
The Lord be with you,
And also with you.
the Almighty God, the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, bless you and be with you always.
Amen.
Amen.
Thank you very much. You've given us a lot of information to pray for, but also a lot of hope. And what you're experiencing here is, I think, an amazing work of grace. And thank all three of you for what you're doing in obedience of your vocations and as being channels of grace to those that God has brought into your life. Thank all three of you very, very much.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us on this special roundtable edition of the Journey Home from Oslo, Norway. I do pray that this has been an encouragement to you, every one of us. We've got to keep growing in our faith. As it says in Scripture, we need to be able to give a reason for the hope that is in us. And that's what we're called to do in our obedience to Jesus Christ. God bless you. See you again soon.